The next control structure we're going to look at is the for control. In life, we say it's time to do homework. There are 28 items on the assignment. For items 1 through 28, I will complete the item. In R, let's say we want to look at powers of 5. Let's use the exponents 1 through 15. So for exponent 1 through 15, I will calculate 5 to that power. Note that in both of these examples, what we're doing is we're iterating around a specified number of times. We're doing item 1, then item 2, then item 3, then item 4, until we're done with item 28, then we stop. In R, we're looking at 5 to the first, 5 to the second, 5 to the third, until we look at 5 to the 15th, and then we stop. So we're looping around, which is why this is often referred to as a for loop. Let's take a look. In this first example, I am going to loop around 15 times and take 5 to the first, 5 to the second, all the way up to 5 to the 15th power. Here's the for statement. That's the control structure. What this tells us to do is to take any variable, any object, we're going to call that object here I, and set it equal to the first item in our sequence, which is a 1. So I is going to be set to 1. Then we're going to do whatever is between these curly brackets. The curly brackets have between them print 5 raised to the power of I, which remember is 1. When we get done with the curly bracket, we go back up to the top and I is automatically iterated to the next number in the sequence, which is a 2. So now we have I as 2, and we come back here. I is now 2, and so we print 5 to the second power. Then we go back up again. What's the next number in the sequence? So I takes on every value in this sequence that we set as 1 to 15, and one at a time does whatever's between the curly brackets before it then takes the next value in the sequence. So this is the key part right here in the parentheses, that I is in that sequence and it will work its way through that sequence. Let's do it. There you have it. The first time it was 5 to the first, 5 to the second, 5 to the third, all the way down here until we got 5 to the 15th power. We could have done this by setting the 1 through 15 first as a vector. So here I'm setting a vector of my exponents. Notice I'm still going to use the sequence, but now instead of putting in 1 through 15, I'm putting my exponents. What I'm wanting you to see is this is logically equivalent. It is the same as what we did up here. It's just now we're creating our sequence ahead of time, but then putting it down here so I still takes on the first value in the sequence, then the second, then the third, and so on. So this should give me the exact same thing. There's my exponents down here. You can see it, 1 through 15. And now when I run, it gives me 5 to the first, 5 to the second, all the way to 5 to the 15th. Here's another example, this time with a character vector. So I'm setting the vector to be the letters EDRM718. All of them as characters. Notice the numerals are in quotes, so they're not numbers, they're characters. So I'm going to set this course. Now notice what I'm doing. I'm showing you a couple things. One is there was nothing special about calling that object I. Here I'm calling that object letter. I could call that object I again. I could call that object Bob. I can call it anything I want. The main idea is when we have a 4 followed by parentheses, the first thing in the parentheses is going to be a new object that is now going to be sequenced through whatever the sequence is. In this case, it's the characters in the vector that we have in this vector. So letter is first going to be E, then letter's going to be D, then letter's going to be R. But now each time, when it's set to E, for example, the first time, it does what's in the curly brackets. And what's in the curly brackets is to print the letter. So it will print the E. Then it will loop back around here, and now the value of letter will be changed to the next item in the sequence, and so forth. So let's watch this in action. So print it an E, print it D, print it R, and so forth, all the way until it got to the 8, at which time it knew it was done because it had done everything in that sequence. 4 loops can be nested in one another. So let's take a look at this and how this is going to work. So what we're going to have, first of all, is we're going to have an I. Again, that could be anything. You could call that Dave. You could call that Mary. You can call it anything. I'm going to call it I. So I is first of all going to take on a 0. And once it's set to 0, it now does everything in the curly brackets. Well, notice there's 2 sets of curly brackets. There's an inner set and an outer set. We're going to go until we find the ending curly bracket that matches this first one on line 140. Well, if you look at line 141, we have another opening curly bracket inside. So the first thing is that one has to end, which happens on 143, until the next curly bracket is the ending for our outer brackets. So think of nesting. We have outer brackets, and then inside we have inner brackets. You're used to seeing this with functions, where you have a function within a function. Well, the inner parentheses go with the inner function, and the outer parentheses go with the outer function. These brackets, curly brackets that are on the outside, go with the I in 0 to 3. All right, so we've already determined now that I is going to take on 0 first, but everything's going to be done inside these outer brackets. Well, what's in the outer what's inside those outer brackets? So we have for J in 0 to 2. So J is now going to take on a 0, not because of the 0 up here, but because of the 0 down on line 141. J is going to sequence through 0, 1, 2. So J will take on 0. Now it does what's in the inner curly brackets. In the inner curly brackets, we have print I, which remember is 0, times 10. So 0 times 10 is 0, plus J, which is also 0. So it's going to print a 0. But what's it going to do? It's not going to go back to I. Why not? Because the inner curly brackets are not done yet. It's going to go back to J. And now J will have a 1. So now when we come down to line 142, I is still 0. We haven't returned yet from the outer curly bracket. We're still in the inner curly bracket. So I is still 0. 0 times 10 is 0. But now J is the second item here, which is a 1. So we're going to get a 1. So we're going to first get a printed 0, then a 1. Now is J done? If we return back up here for the inner curly brackets, no, it has one more value to take. That's a 2. So I is still 0. 0 times 10 is 0 plus 2. So it's going to print a 2. And then we look back here and J has finished its list. Finally, we can leave the inner curly brackets and go to the outer curly brackets and now loop around and say, okay, I, take on the next value. The I now takes on the 1 because it's the next value. So I is now 1. And so now we go back into the outer curly brackets and what do we find? The J loop. And it has to start over. J's now got to be in 0. So print I times 10 is 1 times 10. J is 0. 1 times 10 plus 0 is 10. And then loop around to J, and it's 1. And on and on and on until finally we're back up here to I, and I takes on the 3. And then we come down, J takes on everything from 0 to 2, and then we're finally done. So let's watch. So here you can see 0, 1, 2. That was when I was 0, and the J went through 0, 1, and 2. Then 10, 11, and 12 when I was 1, and the J went through 0, 1, and 2. Then 20, 21, and 22, and 30, 31, and 32. And finally, that I was done. So this is a nest, and a loop within a loop.